can you explain to me what your childhood was like before you entered the war? Like, did you have brothers or sisters or anything like that?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I was the second child. I was born just before World War II, and my father was sent to Alabama by the Corps of the Engineers to build an explosives plant because we didn't have any explosive production facilities in this country. We had bought it from France. France had been overrun, or was about to be. And so I grew up at an explosives plant in South Central Alabama with its attendant difficulties and explosions and whatever. So my father was very much involved in the war effort for the Army Corps of Engineers. And I remember very clearly what it was like in World War II, not to be able to buy milk, eggs, tires for your car, gasoline. Just wasn't available for the most part. I lived in the middle of nowhere on a big explosives plant. So yeah, grew up listening every night to Gabriel Heater, Heater, who was the newscaster of the day on the radio. That was before television, of course. And he gave the war news. And he always said, "There's news tonight." That was his byline. And then he would give us the war news. So I grew up listening to the war news, World War II. I said, I'm going to do my part when my time comes. And that was a strange thing, but people of my generation, a lot of them, just before most of the ones you see here, fathers were very involved with World War II, and it was a very patriotic war. It was a war against evil. It was a war where the soldiers came home and they were acclaimed heroes.
You enlisted in the military and you weren't drafted?
I didn't. Okay. Enlist usually implies that you are becoming an enlisted man. Yes. I was an officer.
Oh, okay.
So I had prepared myself to serve, essentially volunteered to serve as an officer, regardless. And so I would already had a military obligation by the time I graduated from college. You know, I was an officer when I finished college, and so I was definitely going to serve. And I served in this country at several posts, and then was sent to Fort Lewis, Washington, and we formed a new battalion and equipped it and trained it and took it over on a troop ship to Vietnam and landed on a LSI, landing ship infantry, and went ashore at Vung Tau. And all of that was part of my plan. So it wasn't a matter of, are you going to get drafted or not? I was going. That was my choice.
Did you go to basic training?
I had long, many years of, you know what ROTC.
Yes, sir.
And I did summer camp for 6 weeks at Fort Bragg with the 82nd Airborne, which is it is a basic training, but then officers, when they go in, have an officer's basic, which is different. It's oriented more around leadership. And then after that, there's advanced MOS training to prepare you to do a specific job of leadership. And then you go to some posting, which may or might not be a troop assignment. I ended up with troops, of course, in Washington State, and I was platoon leader. I took a platoon over, a reinforced platoon actually, and we went to a place called Phu Loy, which is in the Western 3rd Corps. It's a forward fire base of the 1st Infantry Division at the time. And I operated out of there for the year I was in the country.
I see. So, when you went to Vietnam and you had all your soldiers with you, did you guys do anything for fun, or was it all business? Like, what did you guys do?
There's very little fun. Occasional horsing around with other officers maybe, but that doesn't happen very much, and not in front of the men. We got 2 chances to go out of country in the year I was there for a week each time. I went to Malaya, Penang, Malaya for a week, and I went 5 days, and 5 days to Hong Kong. And that was a time to get away, to go with some other guys, other officers. Or enlisted men had that too. I mean, even the privates, God bless them, got R&R, so they could rest and relaxation, or leave, and they could get out of the country for a short time. But when you were with the troops, I don't think there was any downtime. While I was a platoon leader, I tell people I don't think I ever slept with both eyes closed at once. It's a lot of responsibility.
When you first arrived in Vietnam, what were you thinking? What was running through your mind?
A little anxiety, of course. A little relief in a way. We went over on a ship. I went over early in the war, 66. And for a year or so, 2 years almost, they used ships to take whole units over. After the units were in place, then they just flew in replacements and flew out the ones that were being rotated home. But since we went as a unit, we went on a ship. So we were 23 days at sea. And 23 days with, we were pretty much ready to go ashore by that time. And we did go ashore, and we went ashore, and there were F-100s hitting the hills around us at Vung Tau, because I thought everything would be secure that close to Saigon. It wasn't. And we were picked up by C-123s and dropped into an old Japanese airstrip that the Japanese used in World War II. They had taken over Vietnam in World War II, from the French had been there as a colonial power before that, and they actually ran torpedo planes out of this little jungle airstrip out into the Gulf of Thailand, and sank some British ships out there, and so we landed on that old airfield and landed in 18 inches of water. And there was water to the horizon. We were 36 miles from the South China Sea and 3 feet above sea level, if that gives you any idea how low. It's just water. We landed in water, and then the plane left, and we looked around. What do we do now? So that was our arrival.
So what was war like? Like, how would you describe it?
Well, there's a certain amount of uncertainty. A certain amount of indescribability. It's fun. It's not fun feeling like a target. It's a lot of times nothing happens, and then when it happens all at once, and it's very loud. It happens mostly at night when you can't see anything. You almost never see the enemy. We were in a jungle-covered area. It's just total unknown out there, and you just trust your soldiers and put them out there and watch out for each other and do the mission. Go home if you can. And most people went home, but that sometimes is worse than staying at the time. But I left my guys just before they got hit. I felt guilty about that, still do. But who knows, that's just the luck of the draw. I sat on the front steps for 2 weeks wishing I could go back. I guess I could have, but it was a strange feeling coming back because nobody classed you like the warrior your parents were. You felt you'd let down the greatest generation because we didn't accomplish what they had accomplished in World War II. And of course the problem was that no one had defined the objectives. You can't fight a war if you don't know why you're fighting or what you're supposed to do. In World War II is let's kill enough of the enemy and push them back and take back the land that they took and make them surrender. Well, that wasn't going to happen in Vietnam because it was basically a political war. And we were not going to be able to win that. Win would have been to have the people of the countryside accept their government and support it. And yet we were equipping that government to kill as many of the VC as we could, and for every VC you killed, you probably killed 5 civilians by mistake. That's something you probably don't understand. War always kills more civilians than it does soldiers, always. World War II probably killed 20 million civilians. So every time you kill a civilian, you create 10 more enemy. So you can't, with firepower, create a political solution. You can't.